Servus, Matthias here, and today I'm super excited. Why? Well, we got new shirts. Brand new Singletrack shirts are now ready for sale, just in time for the holidays and for a limited time. I'm working with the fine folks at Cotton Bureau to offer new, comfy, stylish shirts, hoodies, and more in men and women sizes. Visit singletrack.fm/store to check out the new shirt designs and get yourself some stylish new swag to show your love for Singletrack and support this very fine audio extravaganza. All right, let's dive into our holiday gift guide as promised. All the products featured are, as always, at singletrack.fm/gear. First up, base layers. Base layers. Folks, heading outdoors are often concerned with their most outer shell to protect them from the elements. And while a good base layer won't protect you from a torrential downpour, it most certainly will keep you warm, wick moisture away from your body, and can prevent any chafing or hot spots. ibex.com makes some of the best base layers I've come across. The merino wool blend is super comfy on your skin, and the material is biodegradable, which is great for the planet. Two big wins right here. If you are out in the elements chasing glory or on the couch dreaming of adventure, get an Ibex base layer at ibex.com and singletrack.fm/gear for all your favorite holiday gift gear ideas. Do you ever think about upgrading your aftershave or other skincare products? How do you decide on what to get? Sure, the smell is an important factor, but the other is always price. Get the cheapest and hope you don't break out in hives, I guess. But if you're considering upgrading, what do you look for? More expensive is not always better. Often more perfumey or in other ways enhanced, which often feels like a ripoff. That's been my thinking until I tried CBD-infused lotions, aftershaves, and lip balms by Be Great. That's BGREAT.com. Be Great makes hemp-based products which don't get you high. The products give you the upgrade you're looking for in your skincare routine. Visit begreat.com to learn about their full range of products and get some as gifts for your friends and gift for your face. Take care of yourself. Your mind, body, and soul will thank you. All right, in this week's episode of Singletrack, I shared a mic with Maria Dalzot. Maria is no stranger to the Pacific Northwest running community, finishing on a podium consistently at highly competitive trail races around. Over the last few summers, she's been spending time in Europe racing in the Alps. This year, she ran the OCC as part of the UTMB week and the much lesser known trail, the Dent du Midi. I don't know how to pronounce this. This race has a 50-year history, and Maria fell in love with the mountains and valleys of this region in Switzerland bordering France. Well, as you can imagine, after having been over there myself, I could not wait to talk to her about racing in the Alps and eating all the cheese. This episode is for the soul, like my soul for sure. So let's dive in. It is a little bit difficult, right? Because I actually just talked a couple weeks ago with someone and they were saying, I'm so excited that Singletrack is a podcast that talks about the Pacific Northwest and trails around the area. And while I'm happy about this, and obviously I talk a lot about trails here in the area and, you know, changing of seasons. It feels like a local podcast, but I mean, this summer we were in Europe. We have to talk about it, right? And we have to not just share our obviously glorious experiences, but also talk a little bit about the practicalities and challenges and differences. So I'm really, really looking forward to. So let's start with that. And give us a little bit of your itinerary. You were over there for like 5 weeks. Did I get this right?
That's correct. Yep, that's exactly right. We were over there for 5 weeks. I don't know about you, but I can speak from my experience. In 2020, we weren't able to go anywhere. We had our trip to Europe planned, and the reason for the trip being I was competing in the UTMB sister event OCC, which is the 56-kilometer run. that obviously got postponed in 2020. And so we moved the trip to 2021. And the reason that it was 5 weeks is so basically, let me back up a second. We usually go to Europe. We're very fortunate to have the opportunity to race in Europe every summer. And while I was competing in Europe in 2019, we were staying at our friend's house in Switzerland in a very small mountain town that's right on the border of France. France is like 2 miles up the hill in the backyard. And while we were out just running, we saw this runner going by, and they had on a number, like a race bib. And we're like, oh, that's really strange. Okay. And then like we saw another runner and another runner. And after looking into it, I learned that there was a race going on that was an ultra of all different distances that went through the night and over several days, that traversed the Dent du Midi mountain range, which is the mountain range that was right outside of our chalet that we were staying in. So after I was like looking more into this race, I'm like, oh, hey, there's a race that circumnavigates the Dent du Midi mountain range. And I just became really attracted to this idea of racing this circumnavigation. And so, we can get more into details of that. But the reason my trip was 5 weeks long is that this circumnavigation race around the Dent du Midi was 3 weeks after the UTMB OCC. So our plan was to go to Europe, acclimate to the time change for a week, run the OCC, rest for a week, do a course preview for a week, rest for a week, and then race the Dent du Midi and then come home. So that is, in a nutshell, our itinerary.
That is amazing. I mean, when I was over there, I also realized that we over here, we know of a couple of the big races and big name races and big events that get coverage, but there are so many races happening, especially shorter distance races. Like, I think Americans are often focused on the 100-mile distance, but there are a lot of smaller races. So yeah, being over there for a longer period of time makes you almost want to pick shorter distances so you can do multiple races. So, right?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yeah. And you can find a race every single weekend. There's something going on. And maybe even every day, I dare say. Like, there is something all the time for everybody of all abilities. Like, it is truly amazing.
Wow. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Well, let's pick UTMB a little bit. That's the second time that you've been part of that circuit, right? You've done
That is
OCC
correct.
before.
Yes, I did OCC in 2019, and then before that, I would go earlier in the year around June and run the Mont Blanc Marathon. But we figured we would try OCC because it's later in the year, which gives more time of training. In our mountains here in the Pacific Northwest, as you know, don't open up fully until the latter part of July, August. So I didn't have much time to have mountain-specific training that early in June.
Yeah, absolutely. I struggled with that too. And on top of that, our mountains open relatively late, but then we train constantly at such low elevation that it's really hard to get acclimated. I mean, that's what I think destroyed me at Monte Rosa. But talk to me a little bit about OCC. How is it different from UTMB? Do you feel like you still get the full experience of the madness that's UTMB?
The madness. That is a great way of describing it. And yes, you do get the madness. And it is probably the optimum amount of madness that I want. Any more madness, I wouldn't be able to handle it. And I say that jokingly, but it is truly, there is nothing like the atmosphere of UTMB. Anybody listening, if you have yet to experience the madness that is UTMB, it is there's just nothing like it. Nothing can compare to the hype and the noise and the energy of the entire weekend. I mean, every race I'm talking from the kids race to the grand event of the UTMB. There is so much excitement and hype. And so to answer your question, yes, for the OCC, even though this wasn't the premier event, you would never know. You would never know. It is, everybody every race is a rock star event, which is just super special. And again, I just want to reiterate the privilege and opportunity that I've had to be able to run this 2 times now. And I also do want to acknowledge the tragedy that took place this year, which in I think the 19 years of running this event, them being just the series of races, a runner had a tragic fall, and they weren't able to help this person, and he passed away. And this happened the day before my race at the TDS, which is on very gnarly trails. It's not on the course of UTMB or my race. They're just very remote trails, and the weather was not conducive, and the race did everything that they could, and unfortunately, this person could not be saved. So it was devastating. It was devastating to hear the news of this runner falling, and also devastating for the hundreds of runners behind this person, because they were told to stop their race and they had to wait on top of the mountain until they could all be brought down safely. So out of the thousands of people running this particular distance, only about 200 people finished.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing this up, and thank you for reminding us of this. This has been, beyond just what happened at UTMB, it has been a very shocking year for trail running on a larger scale. We've had several fatal accidents in races, in very big races, well known, would seemingly, over the summer you always hear that some runner, hiker, climber goes off and doesn't come back if they're solo and stuff. That sort of goes with the sport, and as the sport grows in popularity, it's tragic every time, but it's something that you sort of start to live with. But in races this year, we've definitely seen an increase, and I think that makes you as a runner and participant definitely pause. But being a participant in the larger sport, I think we need to take a moment to recognize that, and question us in the right moment of if we need to do better as organizations and what can be done that's better. And I don't want to sound callous, but perhaps if the sport grows in popularity, then I don't know, perhaps that's part of the game that's been played. I don't know. I don't want to sound callous, but rock climbing, mountaineering lives with that too, right? And
yeah, that's right. And it really put my race in perspective the next day. It was hard to be. It kind of put a veil over the weekend. I mean, there was still celebration, but everyone, I think, went into it in more of the perspective of let's run this and be safe versus, people, I guess I can only speak for myself. I did want to still run and be competitive, but it really helps keep the perspective of I just want to run this and be safe and come home to my family at the end of the day. Also acknowledging that my race was not nearly as treacherous as the TDS course. You still, again, like you said, it makes you pause and really, I think it's ultra running has become romanticized, and it really helps us pause and be like, oh wait, there are significant dangers associated with it as well that we can't ignore.
I think Overarchingly, if you're looking at mountain sports in general, I do think that we have sort of picked one of the safest. Just because if you think mountain biking or backcountry skiing or actual
Right.
mountaineering, right? I think the overall speed, we are still human powered. We don't really accelerate beyond of what our body is actually capable of stopping in most ways, right? But we are
Right.
pushing ourselves, and especially in races when we feel the pressure of the bib, right? We sort of push ourselves to our limits in areas where we're running in the mountains, right? Where things do can go different, change very quickly, and that can happen in races and happening in a big race like the TDS at UTMB, happening in such a populated area too, gives you double pause because it's not the
Yes.
backcountry, it's not the wild nothing less that some of the races run through
Mhm.
here on the West Coast, right?
That's so true. I mean, you can't go a couple miles without running into some either very small town or some kind of hut of some sort. It's very difficult to be away from civilization for
Yeah,
long.
yeah. Cell coverage is in general usually
Yes,
a lot more
yes.
available. So, okay, that was OCC. Well, let's speak a little bit about your race, actually. Um, and I mean, running OCC. I mean, you speak about the privilege and you speak with a lot of humility. But then at race day, you are competing at the highest level. You are not just doing that the way I perhaps would do it, which is sort of a vacation cherry on top. Anyway, taking vacation with the family, I might as well put a bib on. The way I think a lot of people are doing it, but you run very competitively, and I don't know if all listeners know. So tell us a little bit how it feels to be at the front of the pack and not at the back of the pack.
Well, thank you for that. And yes, I'm quite the opposite. And I think my husband looks forward to the day where we go on vacation, not to race, but actually to be tourists. Whereas our traveling is more for race, so we sit around and rest, and we don't do much else other than rest, race, and rest again. So it'll be one of these days I'll stop trying to race at the highest caliber, and maybe we can be a tourist for a little bit. But yes, I did go on this trip with the priority being these two races, and the UTMB. It's so competitive, and we know so many people. We know so many people running it, and we know so many of the Americans running it, and so I went with the intention of being. The goal is always top 10. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm not afraid of saying what my goals are because I work pretty damn hard. So I really try to go for it every time that I race. And so my goal going into it was top 10, while also being realistic and knowing that every single year all of these races at UTMB get more and more competitive. It doesn't matter the distance, they keep getting more and more competitive. And we knew that, like I said, a lot of the top Americans are going to be there as well. So I also wanted to be, if not top American, top three American. I knew top American was going to be very, very challenging, but you never know. And that's the cool thing about the sport. Someday you have a good day, someday you have a bad day, someday your competitor who on paper should beat you has a bad day, and you just don't know. So that's another reason why I'm not afraid to verbalize and make public my goals, because you just never know.
and
So
and
why not?
and you deserve it in a sense, and it speaks to going on actual vacation. The amount of work that you put in, not just at race day, but before and after, the amount of concentration you put in is a completely different one to the way I go into it, where, I take my family along, and of course I'll drink that extra beer and eat all the food because I'm here to see my family too, which I then pay the price for it, right? But that's a different story.
Hey, it's all what you value, though. Are you paying the price if you're still doing what you value? Because that's what it's about.
No,
right?
It is very true, and it's a big question that let me put it that way. I struggle with, because, and I think that fits into the conversation that we're having. What we're doing is an insane privilege. And when I hear people talk about after their race and they say, this is the hardest thing that I've ever done, then I always laugh at it, because I find myself out in these races and I find myself in pain and struggling. But I always it's not the hardest thing. We get to run around glorious trails, and yeah, it hurts, but this is a huge luxury, right? We're frolicking up on mountaintops, and nothing's at stake.
Well, people feed and water us.
Yeah, exactly, right? But people running around making sure that we're okay and stuff, right?
Yes.
And so, and sometimes I ask myself from a psychological point is if me sort of knowing that in the back of my head, if that keeps me from actually performing on the highest level, because I do put it in perspective and say, well, in the end, it's not that important, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I can say that too. I think it's important to, again, because we can pause and take a step back and go, at the end of the day, I've been racing I'm 33 years old. I've been racing for 21 years now. And I mean, it's going to sound cliche and a little cheesy, but you remember the experiences. You remember that awesome, cheese plate that you ate. You don't remember what place. Like, I was thinking about this conversation. I'm like, what place did I even get? What did I do? I don't even know. And so, so I think that's important to remember too, that even though I've dedicated, most of my life to this sport, it still comes down to connection and community and those moments that are really special, that don't necessarily have to do with a podium. Some of them do, but not all of them.
And for you, it's your business. So, I mean, it's understandable that you have a different intensity and focus and expectation on it. And that's perfectly justifiable. And yeah, you shouldn't in any way feel bad to get into this so serious. Even you feel bad already by yourself because you have to hold off on the cheese plate. So
hey, no, I do not do that.
Good. I'm good to hear.
None of that. Just a side note for listeners, running is not my full-time career. I'm also a dietitian, and I work with people who are in eating disorder recovery, who have eating disorder behaviors, or who have chronically dieted for their life. And so I get that comment all the time of oh, you must really watch what you eat and hold back. And no, I don't. I don't, for many reasons, but the primary reason being is that brings me joy. And again, keeping in perspective, yes, I'm traveling all this way, but also eating good food and being part of the culture is really important to me as well. And I also don't want to get caught up in those disordered eating voices that say I have to eat a certain way to run a certain way, which isn't true. But that's a whole different conversation. But I did just want to insert that there. I think that's definitely practice what I preach.
I know. I think that's great though, because I mean, part of the excitement and fun of traveling overseas, especially into an area where there is good food and plentiful good food, is to be able to fully, as you say, really embrace and participate in the culture around it. In my Monte Rosa race, they had cheese cubes at the aid station, and I thought it was one of the greatest things ever.
Oh, yeah. Oh, cheese, meat sticks. I mean, you name it. And I do have to say that also the anxiety of being, like one of the things that I work on with clients is having more psychological flexibility and physical flexibility around food, because we were up in this small mountain town with a store was a half hour down the mountain. It was not convenient at all. And it was a small store with not a lot of selection. So my main staple for that entire 5 weeks was cheese and bread, pasta and rice, and potatoes. Like that was it, because we're up in the mountains. We're not by the sea. We ate cheese from the cows in the backyard, which was amazing. But that's what was offered there. And so rather than get upset that I'm not, meeting my vegetable quota or whatever it is, it's like, oh, this is good. And because I eat that way at home, of being really flexible, it's my body can handle it. My body can handle it, and most importantly, my mind can handle it.
I mean, it's also, it is something that I noticed too over there, that, especially in those mountain towns, that vegetables is harder to come by.
Yes.
And I wonder if it's something has to do with seasonality, something has to do with our food systems, that it's just harder to get vegetables. Right over here, we ship everything from Mexico, from even further away, and we don't really ask if the prices that we're paying are justified for what we're eating. But then in return, you sit there and the quality of the bread and the quality of the cheese is so good that you're like, okay, I'm okay with not having avocado every day.
Right. Yeah, I can hold off on avocado toast for a month. I'll be okay.
Amazing. All right. So I'm glad to hear that you ate well. And from my point of view, it's not about the fear of eating. I've never personally had any issues with that. For me, it's really about wanting to make sure that you had a chance of really indulging in the culture over there as well. Because
yes, lots of raclette and oh shoot, I forget rosti.
Oh yes,
that was the exciting new dish that I tried. Rosti is a Swiss dish, and it's basically you'll never be able to eat regular home fried potatoes again.
Yes.
After eating a rosti.
For sure. Rosti is absolutely excellent as well, for sure. So, all right. So we've talked about the madness of being part of UTMB. How different was then the second race that you participated in? Was it still madness? Was it still crazy European crowds, or did it have a different feel?
It was totally different. So my goal going into OCC was to be competitive, was to place high among the American runners, which, by the way, I was third American, and I placed 20th, but my time was, I should have looked this up before our conversation, but I ran quite a bit faster than 2019. I want to say like 12 minutes faster, but so that's how competitive that it gets every year. So I was thrilled. I was so happy. I felt super strong from start to finish. I will say that my training leading up to these races was, I had uninterrupted training, a couple little niggles here and there, but nothing that put me back too far. So I was absolutely thrilled. So I felt like I got that good race under my belt, and Dalzot, when I learned of it in 2019, it's a 37-mile race, or about 57 kilometers, with about 14,000 feet of climbing. So a very similar profile to OCC. But the difference with this race is it was not as supported, and it was a bit more exposed. There were areas where there were chains that you have to hold on to as you traverse the side of the mountain, because if anyone has the opportunity to look at the Dalzot mountain range, it's basically 7 peaks, and you have to cut through these peaks 2 times. And so in order to do that, it's a really potentially treacherous passing. And so I had a lot of anxiety going into this race. So I went into this race with, okay, this is going to be more of an adventure. I just want to do this so that I can fight some mental demons, because anybody who's ever heard me talk or knows me personally knows that I struggle with anxiety, especially with exposed and heights. So I was like, all right, if I can do this thing, I can do anything. So that was kind of the mentality of going into this race. But what happened is I recovered really quickly from OCC, and I was feeling really good physically. And as my husband and I went and previewed each part of the Don Tumidi course, and I just kept falling more and more in love with this course. And I kept getting more and more just like, oh, I really want to do well at this. Like it went from, okay, I want to experience this, to, okay, I want to win this. And so I felt like I felt like if the weather cooperated, which now we're looking at the end of September, so you never know, right? The season's starting to change. And truthfully, I had the tragedy of UTMB in my head. And I thought, if it's going to be raining really hard, if the visibility is low, chances are it's going to be snowing at the pass, which is at 8,200 feet, then I do not feel comfortable running this. So we went into it knowing what our boundaries were. And so I knew that if the weather cooperated and, I was feeling decent, that I had a chance. And I was so nervous, because a couple days leading up to it, the weather was just shit. It was so bad. You couldn't see like 3 feet in front of you. And I was really afraid. But I read on the site that they were going to have somebody up on the they were going to have a mountain rescue person kind of hanging out at where it's really dangerous. So I felt a little better. But we also, so the day of, it was expecting to be rain. And so we're like, okay, we're going to start this thing. And if it gets too bad before I start getting into the scary parts, we can, there'll be places where I can pull out. But I got really, really lucky. And the morning of, the sun was out and the weather cooperated, and I got, like, the weather gods were with me, and I am so beyond grateful. I got so lucky on this trip. Let me tell you, I just can't, it's, a lot of it's hard work, but a lot of it is luck. And I just got really lucky in terms of weather on this trip. So the day of my race was really good weather. The way that the heats worked is you could choose to start at 6 a.m. or you could choose to start at 9 a.m. And I chose to start at 9 a.m. because I didn't want to wake up at some ungodly hour. And I thought that most of the elite women would be in at the 9 o'clock start, but it was actually 50-50. Some of them started at 6 a.m. and some of them started at 9. So we knew the winning time of the 6 a.m. and that was the time I had to beat.
Okay.
So yeah. So my husband, Tad, was all over the course, driving like a madman up and down these roads. And if anyone follows me on Instagram, it's saved on my highlight reel of like some of the roads that and like stuff that Tad had to deal with to get to all these points. He is just a rock star when it comes to being crew and supportive. So I started at 9 a.m. and again, I felt really good, and I was leading until the final chain section. I lost some ground, but I ended up navigating the treacherous parts well. I didn't have any problems. I didn't have any panics or freakouts, and I ended up coming in second place. I lost by about 4 minutes, so
nice.
It's so close. Yeah. But again, I'm so happy, and honestly, it just fuels my fire to go back there, because like I said previously, I just fell so in love with this course. This mountain is so amazing and just so not so unknown. And so it's like, I feel kind of ownership of it. I feel protective of it. And I found out that Trail Runner magazine is doing a feature on this race next month in their print issue. And I'm like, oh, now everyone's going to know about my mountain. But the cool thing about this race and why they're doing a feature on it is because this was the 50th year running of the Dantu Midi, and it's the oldest trail race in Europe.
Amazing.
So it has so much history behind it, and there's so much pride. And when you're done with the race, everyone's just hanging out, having a beer. So it does have the small town, like we could have been in the Pacific Northwest. Everyone's hanging out, drinking beer, just lots of camaraderie. So it just had a different feel of UTMB. It wasn't this like intenseness, but it was more community.
Yeah, it is interesting. If people ask you, with your experience of racing over there, would you suggest to people that they have to do, especially now jumping through all these hoops in trying to get into UTMB because it is such a unique atmosphere? Or would they be better served in just finding one of those other races that people don't hear about, don't know about as much, and rather race that and still get that unique European racing atmosphere, but without the insanity of UTMB?
That is such a great question, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, because you're so right about all the jumping through hoops, especially now that UTMB is now partnered with, who are they partnered with now?
Ironman.
Going into next year, Ironman, yes. So things are going to be changing. How you get in is really complicated. I actually had that in mind when I went this year. I was like, this might be the last time, because I don't know if the dynamic's going to change the following year. I don't know what it's going to take to get in. So it is a lot of hoops. If you cannot participate in any of the UTMB events, fear not. Because there are equally impressive, if not as impressive, races that are in Europe that are, like you said, less known, but the pride is there, the way that they put these races on. I mean, you have the big banners, you have the arch finish line, you have the music that's really daunting. They have that at all the races. They have the cheese and the meat sticks at the finish line. They have it all there. And just, this is a complete side note, but it's a memory that really is special to me. We were over in Europe in 2019 running OCC, and we were looking for just kind of a tune-up race to shake off the cobwebs while we were over there. And we found a half marathon, and it started in the valley of, where was it? Hey, Tab, where did that half marathon start? It started in a town where the famous Swiss marathon starts.
Oh,
we're both drawing.
Is it Sierra Sinald?
Is it Sierra Sinald? The Jungfrau Marathon.
Oh, okay, Jungfrau Marathon. Okay.
Jungfrau, yes. So it started in the valley there, and then it just climbed all the way up to like 10,000 feet. So it went from the valley just one way, 10,000 feet. It was a half marathon. And I should have prepared this story beforehand. I didn't know I was going to be telling it. But the very top of the race is where they shot one of the James Bond films. And so when you cross the finish line, there's like this life-size statue of James Bond. and then the whole like eating area at the top of this mountain, there's nothing else around, is James Bond themed. And so you would go into, like, I went into the bathroom to change my clothes, and the bathroom door has the Bond girls on it. And then when you step up to the door, it like opens automatically and it goes da-da-da-da. And then in the bathroom, they're playing scenes from James Bond with like gunshots going off, and it was just so bizarre. But it was so cool. I mean, it was like, I had no idea. This race was called Inferno, if for anybody interested in looking it up. It was called the Inferno Half Marathon, and it was just so special and unique. And it's something I'll never forget. So if the UTMB is not the end all be all of racing in Europe. There are so many special and unique events of all different distances and different terrain, whether you like super technical or something a little tamer, whether you like a 5 mile or, a 5-day event, that you can find something for you.
I think that's that is a perfect story to really explain that. Yeah, if you want the madness and you want to hear Conquest of Paradise, then you have to run UTMB. But you don't even, if you want Chamonix, you don't even have to run UTMB, because additional races throughout the summer that are happening there. I mean, you ran that Chamonix Marathon, or what is it called? Mont Blanc Marathon.
That was the Mont Blanc Marathon. Yep, that's the end of
Yeah,
June.
exactly. So there are additional races if you really want to experience Chamonix ones that you can run without it being UTMB. But at the same time, yeah, there are so many races. And my Monte Rosa one was different. Partially, I think, because this year it was so convoluted, they had to completely change the race route. And so I think they were like scrambling a little bit, getting all the pieces together because of COVID and stuff. And so it felt subdued. And I think it was even more subdued than it usually is, because I think it tries to be a lot more chill. And so for me personally, that's the one, aside from the DNF, that's the one sort of sad spot that I walked away from, that I did feel like I raced almost the entire race by myself. Like the aid stations were great and friendly, but the rest of the race I was really by myself, where I was like, well, I did come to Europe for that feeling of a little bit more support and connection to the town, right? And so you do want to be aware of as you're picking races of, how small of a race you pick, if that is one of your goals. But if you want a race that gives you that European atmosphere, the huts at the, not just a couple tents in the middle of a forest road, but actually a hut with James Bond music playing as an aid station, right? then almost every European race will have that to offer, right?
Yes. That is so true. Yes.
So Americans, fear not. Changes to UTMB doesn't mean the end of your dreams of running epic races in Europe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true.
Oh yeah, and man, James Bond. Yeah, we were in Austria, and there was another scene. There's so many different scenes in different parts filmed of James Bond. I could talk about James Bond, but it's a different story. We should talk about trail. All right, let's talk some more about food, because I can always talk about European food. I'm so glad to hear that you totally indulged in everything. Tell me a little bit more. So rösti for sure, raclette all the time. What else did you eat over there?
Like I said, there wasn't much diversity because it was like us and cows. My Instagram feed for 5 weeks was just me and the cows, which I loved so much. But honestly, it was we went out to eat a couple times, but it was mostly when we were in Chamonix, because we've been there a couple times. We knew that there were some good places to eat there, but it's very much more Americanized there. So we got like tacos and whatnot, which were really good, but not so much traditional food. But really, just I'm going back to the cheese. We just got to eat the cheese that the cows in our backyard made, and just trying different kinds of breads, and going to get the traditional rosti and seeing how they make it. And in it was a restaurant where these people lived, and just the culture behind it was just really special, really cool. And I am also a wine drinker, and so I drink. I enjoy a glass of wine with my cheese and bread.
Nice, fantastic. We had some absolute amazing meals over there too, and we stopped by this one restaurant for lunchtime, and it was essentially a hut on the side of the mountain. And after a meal or during a meal, the proprietor came out. She's this 80-year-old woman who's lived in a hut for essentially her entire life. And, she sold us some cheese that, their cows produced behind the hut. And we smuggled the cheese into the country, and now
Oh, you did? Oh, you lucky duck.
I know.
I tried to do it, and I made it all the way to the airport, and I had to get rid of it.
We just hid it really, really deep in our checked luggage, and I hope
no one tells.
Exactly. I hope nobody from U.S. Customs listens to this podcast. No, that was fantastic. So, do you rent a car over there when you stay for 5 weeks? Tell me a little bit about logistics, because for me, my logistics are reasonably easy, and obviously super privileged and lucky. I've got family over there. So, for the first 2 weeks, I was able to stay in the house of friends of ours that were on vacation at that time. And so we could stay at the house, and they had an extra car. And so we were driving around with a car of a friend of ours. So for me, I can do a lot of these kind of fairly convenient connections, which can also save a lot of money, right? But
absolutely.
How do you?
We, again, counting my blessings, we have friends who I live in Bellingham, and which is about an hour and a half north of Seattle, and we have good friends who just so happen to have a chalet in Switzerland. And so they are very kind and gracious and allow us to come and stay the entire time at their chalet. And it just so happens to be an hour and a half from Chamonix. It was, out the back door of my second race. It's just in a very premier location. And so we had it pretty easy. The hardest thing about getting over there was going through all the COVID paperwork. We were so paranoid.
Yeah.
I mean, I told Tad, my husband, the racing was going to be the easy thing, because once we got over there, we would be okay. Who cares about coming home? But once we get over there, we can relax. But we flew into Germany, and there were COVID requirements for that. And then flying into Switzerland, you had to get COVID requirements for that. And then we were going to France, and there were different requirements for that. So we literally, it took weeks to collect all of our paperwork, get all of, our I's dotted and T's crossed. And we managed to get all of our testing done in the correct time frame. But let me tell you, we saw a lot of meltdowns in the airport of people who either were missing paperwork, or their negative COVID test was outside of the permitted range, or they got the wrong kind of test. And so a lot of things could potentially go wrong, but I feel really grateful that we had a binder full of crap just in case. So it was something, let me tell you.
What time did you fly out? What time of the summer?
It was about mid-August. It was around August 14th.
Yeah, so you flew out at the same time, because I felt like, the terror in trying to get the testing done when, that was also right at the time when the Delta variant was sort of growing. So test results were taking longer to come back. And we don't have to recall the entire thing, but it was super stressful trying to make sure we get the testing results in time before our flights. I actually got 2 different tests for the kids, because we went to the pediatrician at first, and they got the test there, but then they couldn't guarantee that the results would be in time before we flew in. So we got another test that was quick. But I felt like once you come to the airport, I felt like they were super relaxed. But perhaps it only felt relaxed because we just had all of our T's crossed.
yes, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. We we're sweating getting there, and then once we were there, we're like, wait a minute, you don't need to see this, and you don't need to see that, and you don't need to see this. So,
and the communication wasn't clear, right? Because you read the German or
Yes.
European entry, and it says 72 hours before entering that country. And you're like, well, my flight's already like, 15 hours. So like if counting
Right.
back, it's almost impossible
Exactly.
to get test results. And what you don't want to do is spend the $200 for a test result by trying to get it at the airport, right? You have to find a way of doing it beforehand somehow.
Right. Yeah. We got actually the take at home
Oh,
tests.
okay. Yeah.
So we actually bought tests here in the States and took them with us so that we could take them there before we flew out. And it takes like 15 minutes. You do it on the computer where someone watches you, and you have test results in 15 minutes. And that was like a game changer. That was like a really I give kudos to my husband Tad. He's the one who did the research and found that, because that was awesome.
Yeah, I was super fortunate that Monte Rosa, because the race was in Switzerland, they required testing before the race, and because we had been already 2 weeks in Germany, the tests that we gotten before we left obviously weren't applicable, so they require testing. But because they require testing, they actually set up their own testing center right in their
Oh
town.
wow.
So, and getting into the race, I got a test, 12 hours before the race. But then, brilliant logistical thinking on their part, they kept the testing center open after the race because they knew that everybody was flying back out away from the race. And so they offered testing after the race. So I got my entire family tested when
Oh,
we
that's
left
great.
Switzerland before we had headed to the airport, and there was enough
Oh, the
time, right?
timing. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
Because I wouldn't have wanted to try to find a testing center in Zurich on the way to the airport. That would have been.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that would have been a nightmare, I'm sure.
So,
Oh,
so,
man.
so driving in Switzerland, did you ever take these crazy train ferries that you drive on that takes you underneath the mountain and spits you out on the other end?
I To answer your first car question, so when we get there, we do rent a
Oh, yeah,
car.
exactly. I
So
guess we
we
never
have
talked
a
about it.
car.
Yes.
Yeah, so we do get a car. We rent a car for the entirety of the time there. But I can't remember where. I think I've only done that where you actually drive up on the train. And now that I'm recalling, I haven't thought about this in years, but I raced in Slovenia in 2016. And I think to get to that race course, we did that. And I've never done that before in my life. And that was crazy. You just literally drive up onto a truck, and the truck, it's like a
Yeah.
ferry on the
Yeah.
road that takes you underneath the mountain. That was my first experience doing that.
Yeah. I thought it was some rare thing that's sort of more of like an historical thing. And then I did research, and there are like, I don't know, half a dozen, if not more, locations in Switzerland because the mountains are so steep and everywhere, and these passes aren't open all year round, right? And so they have these, these trains that you drive on, and it's all super convenient. It's as easy as driving into a parking garage, but instead of driving onto a parking spot, like in a parking garage, you drive onto a train, and then you put the car on
Right.
brake, and then it takes you through the mountain. You come out the other end, which was
Yeah, it's
crazy.
pretty neat.
Um,
Yeah.
going back to trail running, talk to me a little bit about how you would describe the difference in trails in compared to here the Pacific Northwest. Do you feel like how would you describe them? How are they different?
Well, compared to here in the Pacific Northwest, we kind of alluded to it earlier. So, I think we did anyway. I can't remember if that was off the off the mic or on the mic at this point. But coming from sea level and going to what some consider altitude, I consider where for myself where I start to notice it is anywhere around 6,000 feet, and so the elevation definitely is quite different. As far as terrain goes, the climbs are much steeper, and there are a lot of things that could never pass in the U.S. There are a lot of safety concerns that would never
Yeah.
pass in the U.S. One thing that always amazes me is just like oh, you want us to run up this? Which in the US, it would be like a hazard zone, no one go near, like, proceed at your own risk sort of thing. But so it's much steeper. There's, I guess, a lot more confidence in the skills of the people who are doing the activities. Whereas here, I believe there's an exception to every rule, right? But for the most part, there are switchbacks that make it the trails a bit more easier, whereas the climbs in Europe are very, very long and very steep. It's hard to find a climb unless you're at like Rainier, Baker, or someplace like that, where you have a climb that is 3 to 5 miles just of straight up climbing with no break, whereas it's like that everywhere over there. So really, really long climbs, really, really long descents without much switchback. So it's more technical running, I would say.
It is, right? This is the thing that surprised me too. Like we look at the Alps from over here and we think, well, there's a hut every 2 miles and a cable car and gondola everywhere, so the trails must be easier, more accessible. But the steepness of the trails is truly something that I did not anticipate.
Everything is hard.
Yeah.
Everything, like an easy day is hard. Like we would literally drive to find somewhere just with the semblance of flatness, just even if it was an optical illusion, like just something that came off as looking flat. Because everything. I'm like, why are we always going up? Why?
I know. I was trying to make my way to an aid station, and I knew, the aid station was supposed to be in this town, in this little village, and I make it to the edge of the village, and I'm like, well, okay, now it can't be very far, and B, it needs to be easier now because I'm in a village. And even just the path through the village, because it was like glued on the side of the town, I'm like, why am I still gaining 400 feet of vertical gain? I'm already in town. There's an aid station here. This is not supposed to happen.
Oh my gosh, I so relate. I remember using poles going through a street.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It's absolutely nuts. I don't understand. And they don't have all the traffic going through and stuff, and obviously those routes are historical, and they've been fine with these. Obviously, great. They don't change them now, but that was truly something that I still haven't quite digested. Because how do you even train for that? I picked the steepest routes over here that I could think of. And I'm looking at them now in comparison to some of these trails that I ran over there, and I'm like, yeah, it's not matching up. This is not good enough training.
I can so relate to that, and I've had that experience myself, where when we first started going over there, we thought we were going into it prepared because we found the steepest hill and we climbed that mountain I don't know how many times, so surely I'll be prepared. And it's really hard to mimic the course being back here at home. It's just near impossible. Again, unless you can get on Rainier or Baker, which again is not easy to do. It's not convenient, and there's such a small window of opportunity there. And so my training changed as I got older, in that it wasn't so much about being specific, because that wasn't possible without living over there. It was about being strong enough to handle it. And so it was about increasing my mileage in a safe way. Like I said, I've been running for a really long time, so it's taken me decades to be able to run 90-mile weeks and being okay with that. And so really doing a lot of strength as far as mileage goes, to be able to be strong enough that I can just withstand that duration of climbing, and also the downs, because that's as equally taxing.
The downs too, for sure. Absolutely. No, it is very interesting, but it's so worth it, right? The experience being over there and being in a different,
so special.
Being in a different culture. It's always worth it. I've always enjoyed traveling for races and running in a different atmosphere, right? It's just from an endorphin, from a distraction point of view, you get to see something else. It's fun to race in your neck of your woods too, and connect with your community and run on trails that you're familiar with. But traveling and getting to see something else is truly a spectacular way of both, well, traveling and racing, right?
Oh yeah, and I just want to add, connecting with the people that even if you don't share the same language, you're still connecting over the suffering and the pain. And there was a part of Dalzot where there were cows that would just not. We didn't even talk about how the cows get in the way.
No, I have a great story for that. So you go first. Let's talk about the cows.
Let's talk cows. Okay, let's talk about the cows. All right, I've been waiting for this.
Fantastic.
There was a section where, like it happened at OCC, but I was able to yell, and they got off the trail pretty, slowly but surely, but they were not getting out of the way at this part in Dalzot, and there was nothing around except I was running with this guy, and we didn't speak the same language, but he spoke a couple English words, and I was leading and he was behind me, and I stopped because I was afraid. I didn't want to be too aggressive because the cows seemed aggressive, and he, through sign language and whatnot, he basically said, "I'll take the lead," and we kind of went off the trail a bit and up and around, and he was able to get them out of the way. But I feel so grateful. I think I even I gave him a shout out on Instagram or my race report or whatever, thanking this guy for taking one for the team and really leading the way through that cow part, because I don't know what I would have figured it out eventually, but he saved a lot of time, and it was something we bonded over, which is really cool. I was able to say thank you, and we worked together through that part, and it was just really special.
It is really funny, and we need to explain to people, just even getting to the cows, it's not like they're going all over the place. You are constantly running trails, and you have to either climb over into these cow pastures, or you have to open these electric fences, right, and close them behind you, right?
Yes, or carefully step over them without getting shot.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you just go right through it. And there were sections of Dalzot where they have signs that there are the sheepdogs that are guarding the sheep that will come running up to you barking because they're protecting the sheep, and so you have to stop and walk until the dogs calm down. And it's just, again, it's like part of the rules. It's part of the culture. It's part of racing over there. You gotta be mindful of that. We get when we run out here in the Pacific Northwest, we get notified of a potential, there's cougars and bears, which are very, very rare, or, sometimes there are rattlesnakes on the east side or whatever. So we get a debrief on that. But here it's the similar thing where, you just got to deal with the cows, you got to deal with the sheep, you got to deal with the dogs. And it's just a different obstacle that you can't get frustrated that you have to stop and walk, because it's part of the game. Yeah.
I was running on a fairly wide, like a gravel road, fairly wide path. And I come around this corner, and this giant cow was standing perpendicular to the trail. There was no way for me to cross the trail. And it was to cross the cow on the trail. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. And I was trying to figure this out. On one side, the hillside was going up fairly steep. On the other side, it was going down, but there was another electric fence. And so, as I was approaching this cow, I was like, I cannot cross that cow, because that cow would literally just have to poke its head out and would kick me off the trail, right? Because it was so big, it was taking up so much of the trail. I think every time I tell the story, this cow's getting bigger too.
It gets bigger.
But it didn't feel like a cow where it was like, oh yeah, look, there's this cow. No, it felt massive. Anyway, I approached this cow, and I was 20 feet away from the cow. Still very hesitant. At that point, obviously, I wasn't running anymore. I was sort of trying to figure this out. And then this bull shows up like 30 feet above me on a hillside and moves and was totally like making its territory known. And it was like, he was like, you do not fuck with that cow. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go find a way of going around it. That bull was so angry. They would have come charging down the hill if I would have tried to get any closer to that cow. So I had to crawl underneath the electric fence on the far side. And then at least I was on the other side of the electric fence, right? So I knew that then I was okay. And there were no cows on that side. And so I just had to kind of wander around, make a big circle around.
Oh my god!
But it was...
The funny thing is I can just picture you doing that.
Exactly, you know exactly. The weird electric strings that feel so harmless and you really don't want to touch. Oh man, yeah, that was a funny experience. And I mean, I grew up with that. We as families, we went to the Alps on vacation, so dealing with sort of going in and out of these cow pastures and stuff I'm familiar with, but it was still funny to sort of experience it that way during a race when you're then by yourself and you have to make decisions and you are under the gun of time and stuff, right? So yeah, it was funny.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to that pausing and putting in perspective and putting safety. You know, some people, I have a client who says safety third. Some people go that route, but I always have the safety at the forefront because nothing is worth, no race is worth getting hurt if you have any control over it.
Yeah, and it's you're not just alone on the planet, right? I've got family waiting for me and stuff like that, right? You want to be allowed to run another race. If you destroy yourself and you have to get scooped off the mountain, then exactly. You might get and this was your last adventure. Yes. Like, okay, I guess you're right. Oh man. Do you bring souvenirs home? Is that you've traveled quite a bit? Are you beyond that now, or?
Little things. I'm trying to think. Okay, you're gonna laugh, but this is just me being honest. The souvenirs I brought home, I was gone for 5 weeks. I brought home a plate with a cow on it. It's like it's like an actual cow figurine that's 3D that's on the plate.
Fantastic.
So it's a cow plate. We brought home a spatula with a sheep on it. And then I got a pair of underwear with the Dantumidi mountain range on it because I figured I've been up close and intimate with this mountain range for 5 weeks. I might as well have it on my underwear.
I love it all. No, it's interesting, right? Because if somebody goes to Disneyland, they might have to, check off the boxes or to a place they perhaps go once in their life or so, right? And you do the gift shop and stuff. But if you go over the reasonably regular, then there are certain things that you look forward to. You can't get over there, right? And the cheese is
there's mustard.
Yes.
There's mustard that my husband brings home. He brings home mustard. There's a pesto that I sometimes bring home. I didn't on this trip, but there's things you look forward to that you can't get anywhere else.
We flew Iceland Air, and we were lucky that, well, I think they always do this, but they basically beforehand they charge you an arm and a leg for checked bags, and then when you get to the counter, they desperately want you to check their bag, so it's there's less stuff in the cabin. And so we tried not to check a bag. Well, we actually bought a bag over there and checked an additional bag just so we could get all of our souvenirs back home. And for us, it's souvenirs is not the tourist shop. Even though I did buy a big cowbell, I have to admit, in Austria.
Oh, hey, you need a cowbell.
I feel like it was. I felt like it was very important. It's hanging right by the door, and when we walk out, we can ring the doorbell, the cowbell.
I love
yes.
That.
I needed it. I said the only way I'm going to buy it is if I can get a big enough bell that it really sounds as deep the way the cows actually make a sound, right? Because over here you can go to races and they're cow bells, but then there are those tiny little bells that make these high.
Yeah, that are too like.
Yeah, exactly. Make these high pitched noise. No, I wanted this really deep. So yeah, I got a big cowbell episode.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but we brought mustard and gin, and I always need an Austrian rum that is super high proof,
nice.
that we only use for baking. Like we don't even drink it, but it's like if you bake like a marble cake and you put rum in, or any cake that calls for rum but you use actually that high proof Austrian rum, then it actually works. Wherein if you put like, one of those like Bacardi rums in it, then you don't taste it. It completely burns out. You need one of those super high proof rums. So we have like a whole checklist of things that we know that like when we go over there, we go shopping.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's so special. I love that so much.
It's fun too, because I mean it's not just buying shit. It's about memories, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to buy the same cheese, but if you have that plate with this little cow on it, and next time you cube up some cheese and you put it on that plate, then you at least still feel a little bit like that moment. Even
I can't tell you the joy,
right?
The amount of joy it brings me. Yes,
absolutely. Oh man, this is very special. I very much enjoyed this, talking about this, because I feel conflicted, because I am from over there, and so it's a huge privilege to connect to that culture, and it's also my birthright to try to preserve these memories and this heritage. But I do understand that for most people, Europe is really, really far away and is like once in a lifetime experience. And to be able to go over there and feel somewhat at home is special and makes the experience completely different, because you're not just bouncing
you're not just living in a suitcase.
Yeah, you're not just bouncing,
being stressed out every day.
From hotel to hotel. You actually know people over there, right? So you get a little bit of the inside scoop of what to do, and that's totally worth it.
I couldn't agree more. So I definitely, cherish these moments and the opportunity to get to reflect on it with you.
Of course.
Because it's, it just Switzerland and France and Europe in general. And like I said, I've never gone to be a tourist. I've gone to these really small towns that no one speaks English. And so maybe one of these days I'll be a tourist and go to the big cities and do all the things. But I really enjoy the quiet mountain life and just getting to really learn about the people who live there and just kind of the day-to-day routine. And my family's in Italy, and because of COVID, I didn't go back and visit them. But when I went to visit my family, we saw the family graveyard. Like we didn't go anywhere other than we ate at home and just saw what the family did. And it's just really special and something that I never take for granted.
Yeah, that's a perfect way of putting a button on this. Maria, thank you so much for coming on the show and letting me live out my Euro homesickness. Why don't you give the listeners a quick collection of some links or some places where they can reach out to you and connect with you?
Well, thank you. Listeners can, if you're interested in just, chatting about your cow experience or races that you've run, or any tips and tricks about going over and racing in Europe, any questions at all, or about nutrition or food related things, you can go to my website, which is my full name, Maria Dalzot RD. The RD stands for Registered Dietitian. You can also find me very easily on Instagram. It's just my full name, Maria Dalzot. Communication is really important to me. So if you have any questions or comments, I'll be really quick to get back to you.
Fantastic. We'll have all these links in the show notes for people to easily click on and link on. Maria, thank you so much again. Sometimes we have to go to Europe in the wintertime too, because these Christmas markets and
I can't
right.
imagine.
I mean, I'm not a big winter sport person, but
I'm not
right.
either.
But when you see these like snowy these villages like Chamonix and others, and you imagine them in the winter, and you don't even need to ski, right? I mean, it would be just fine to have a Glühwein and a cup of coffee or whatever, and a hot waffle, and walk down those snowy villages one of these days.
Okay, I'm sold. Let's do
Let's do it.
Let's go book our flights now.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Singletrack. And thanks to Maria Dalzot for joining us this week. Again, visit singletrack.fm for show notes and links to everything Maria mentioned, and to our holiday gift guide featuring Ibex base layers and Be Well skincare products. And of course, get a Singletrack t-shirt and support the show. See you next week.